Hello there. Today, the figure I'll be taking a look at is of a character I've collected a bunch of, but not quite the version I was hoping for. Today, we'll be looking at Ben Kenobi, the New Hope version. Obi-Wan. That is a figure I haven't reviewed in a long time. A long time. The last Obi-Wan figure I reviewed was the Attack of the Clones version, which was a solid figure in its own right, but a little too similar to the Phantom Menace version for me. I was hoping that the next figure they would release would be the Revenge of the Sith version, since that is my all-time favorite appearance of the character, but they skipped about 20 years ahead and gave us this New Hope version instead. Hopefully, Revenge of the Sith is right around the corner, and not as a web shop exclusive, because if it is, I'm gonna riot. Out of the box, I can see the improvements they've made to the facial sculpt since the beginning of this line. This is Alec Guinness all the way through. There aren't any angles where the sculpt isn't quite there. This is a great likeness. The issue that I had with the Attack of the Clones version is obviously not a problem here. This outfit is all new. The detailing on the robes is good, but not quite as realistic looking as the previous figures. To stand out from the other ones, he's wearing a cloak, which is accurate to the movie. It's made entirely of plastic, which I'm torn on. On one hand, it helps the look of the figure, but on the other, it limits the figure's articulation quite a bit. I would have loved an alternate torso where the cloak is removed. Under his skirt, you can see his legs, which is surprising they even bothered detailing them, as you really should never normally see these. Here's where he kind of falls apart a bit, the articulation. His arms can only go up this far, which limits poses quite a bit. His legs actually can go up quite far, but really for no good reason. Thanks to his skirt and cloak, you can actually stand him up like this. His legs can also go out to the sides a fair amount. His head is the only important part of his body that has decent articulation. Obi-Wan doesn't really pull any extreme poses in the movie, and he is an old man, so the limited articulation isn't such a big deal. He comes included with 2 lightsaber gripping hands, and let me just say, swapping these hands in and out is so much easier than it was with the Phantom Menace version. This line has really come a long way. Next up is this mind trick hand, which looks really nice and expressive. He only comes with 1 of these, which is a really lame thing that Bandai does. I don't see why they don't just give 2 of every hand. These open palm hands are up next. Not really much to say about these. You can kind of get him in his natural pose from the movie, but it's clear the hands are just floating and not touching his belt. He, of course, comes with a lightsaber. 2 versions, actually. First up is this unignited version. It can hook onto his belt, which is always a nice touch. The sculpt on both lightsabers is very good, however the paint is a bit off. There shouldn't be this much black on the hilt. Towards the top, there should be some copper and silver bits. Obviously, there is an ignited version as well. Obi-Wan doesn't use his lightsaber in the movie very often, so I'll probably stick with the first one. You can give him hands from the previous figures to recreate scenes from Rebels as well as A New Hope. Next up is this hood, which looks so good it single-handedly justifies the plastic coat. With the inclusion of this hood, you can recreate the greatest Obi-Wan scene in the franchise. He comes with 1 alternate faceplate, which is a strange inclusion. It's a closed-eye version. This is to recreate the scene where he dies. A bit morbid, but a cool inclusion nonetheless. Last but not least is probably the most tongue-in-cheek accessory I've ever seen. His cloak from when he disappears. Again, very morbid, but a cool inclusion. If I had a Vader figure, I would absolutely pose him next to this. So that's basically it for Ben Kenobi here. A pretty solid figure in terms of sculpt and accessories, but pretty damn disappointing in terms of articulation. As I would have picked him up no matter what, I'm at least happy that he looks good and different from the previous releases, while I absolutely would have rathered a Revenge of the Sith version. I am pleased with this figure, and would assume that this is the most iconic version for many fans, so I would highly, highly recommend him, as long as the articulation isn't a deal breaker.